Hello, everybody. Welcome to NASCAR Silly Season. That's JC, our resident NASCAR expert. A couple months ago, I posted on my story on Instagram that I was going to watch the Daytona 500, and he DM'd me an entire Google spreadsheet worth of predictions. How are those predictions going, by the way? I haven't been paying that much attention.
I haven't checked them for a while, but they weren't. I don't think they were as bad as last year. Um, I do know I got the Daytona 500 right. I started off on a hot streak because I think I had I don't remember I didn't get the Clash right, but I got Daytona and Las Vegas right. So I got two of the first three right with Byron and Lawson, but I haven't checked in a while. I think I'm probably like 2 for 20 now. So it's hard to predict in this because pandemonium, silly. It's silly. NASCAR sometimes is silly. Thus the name silly season.
I mean, we kind of saw that today at New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Because, good Lord, that was a mess.
I do think it was a success though in terms of the wet weather tires. They showed they could be sustained, and it showed complete chaos wasn't. I mean, we saw guys that normally. I mean, Chase Briscoe was 25th when they put on wet weather tires. Josh Berry was 20th. I mean, those guys. I mean, it was a topsy turvy finish, but I believe um, that was because they could adapt. It wasn't because everybody got in a wreck because it was wet. It was. I think the wet weather tires did their jobs, and I think NASCAR should bring them back to ovals in the future.
I
Like it
think
did.
it proves that we should have raced on in the Coca-Cola 600. I don't even care if it was at 1 in the morning. I might be biased because I feel like Chase Elliott had a little bit of a chance to win in Charlotte at the 600, but it is what it. And I'm also very anti-Toyota for obvious reasons.
Yeah. Wow.
Uh, but
um,
I feel like we should have been racing there.
that was an interesting situation in entirety. Obviously, there's the rumors about Fox, Fox themselves ending the race. It wasn't NASCAR's
They ran
decision.
out of things to talk about. I was getting tired of
Yeah.
that.
Um, but I think the first two finishers of the race were probably the two best cars. I think it would have been a showdown between Christopher Bell and Brad Keselowski, and maybe maybe Brad wins. But I mean, I think all things considering, the finishing order was about where it was going to be. But obviously, it would have been nice to get back going. But
Well, we had talked about it a little bit. That was no, that was at Illinois when Austin Cindric won. That it was Christopher Bell's race to lose, and then he did.
and then
Illinois was silly. That was some silly with Christopher Bell. His engine blew up or something. What was it? Ryan Blaney or Chris Buescher ran out of gas.
yeah, so we were robbed of a real of a one of the better finishes of the year. Obviously, we had Kansas, but still, Bell and Blaney were having a duel, and then 5-6 laps to go, Bell blows
Christopher
his
Bell
engine.
blows up, and then um,
Blaney runs out of
Ryan
gas.
Blaney completely ignores his commercial that he shot 4 or 5 years ago
Yeah,
about
I
if he's
mean,
good on gas. He wasn't.
he didn't save at the pump.
He didn't save at the pump.
Yeah,
And so that brings us to New Hampshire. New Hampshire was pretty long today. We had a whole bunch of start and stops, a whole bunch of we had a weather delay. I saw Kyle Larson's car um, under the tarp for a long, way too long of a time. I am a Chase Elliott fan through I like to be called grandfathered in. My grandfather's been a Chase Elliott fan. My dad's a Chase Elliott fan. So I kind of feel like I suffer
um,
enough with other leagues. At least let me have a Hendrix car.
yeah.
Um, so, but as a Hendrix fan, I'm getting very tired of Kyle Larson in the
What?
media.
Well, I mean, you missed 2021. Chase Elliott fans. I mean, Chase Elliott fans were probably the biggest anti Kyle Larson fans, even though he was drove the same team. I mean, he came off the championship in 2020, 2021. He had a decent season. It should have been It should have been about Chase Elliott. It should have been the narratives and all that. And then Kyle Larson comes in after his 2020 hiatus, if that's what we'll call it. And then he comes out and wins 11 races and completely puts all the other Hendrick cars to shame. I mean, even Chase Elliott's two or three win season, Bowman won 4 races seemingly out of nowhere. Byron won a couple races, but nobody remembers that because Kyle Larson won 11 flipping races and dominated the season.
Well, 11 races is a lot considering that's like almost half of the regular season. But if in case you didn't know, JC, and you might not, this is something very, very niche. Kyle Larson had a chance to run 1,100 miles the day of the Coca-Cola 600. I don't know. Nobody ever mentioned that.
Well, so Kyle Larson, there have been multiple drivers that have tried to complete the double in mostly in the last 20 years, the 21st century. Only one driver has actually successfully done it, and my favorite driver for a while, Tony Stewart, finished in the top 10 in both races. Robbie Gordon did it a bunch. He never could complete all 1,100 miles. And then famously, Kurt Busch tried to do it in 2014 and finished good in the Indy 500, and then was going to have a good day at Charlotte, and then blew a motor. So that kind of sucks. And the hype around the Kyle Larson double brought a lot of fans, and I think that played a huge part into NASCAR eventually giving him the waiver to make the playoffs. But I do believe, that was just a good. It was good for the sport entirely. All the publicity that NASCAR got and Kyle Larson got from running the Indy 500 qualifying in the Fast Six, running in the top 5 or 6 most of the day. I mean, he sped on pit road and cost himself a good finish, but I think he finished 17th or 18th. That was not indicative.
He had a pretty good day considering it was his first time ever at Indy, and there was a while we didn't even think he was going to qualify. He was struggling to qualify over at Indy for a minute. So
he had a bad fast car.
But I like what you mentioned about it being good for the sport. It feels like, I don't know if it's just because I'm finally paying attention to NASCAR. This is my first season in NASCAR. Daytona was my first race. JC can confirm I had probably way too many questions. I was probably pissing him off, asking what everything was. I feel like NASCAR this season has had probably one of the more exciting seasons in a while. Maybe, I don't know if it's been more like something is tuning in. I feel like golf is at the same level right now, especially with guys like Scotty Scheffler and whatever the heck Bryson DeChambeau is doing, or DeChambeau, whatever the heck type of steroids he's on. I feel like we're seeing a lot of these sports like golf and NASCAR, these Sunday afternoon napping sports. Or maybe I'm just getting older and can appreciate the Sunday afternoon napping sports more.
So NASCAR had a problem from 2015 to about 2020. All the guys that I grew up on, all these guys, the legends of the sport that in NASCAR's heyday, everybody grew up watching, retired. Mm-hmm. Jeff Gordon in 2015, Tony Stewart, Dale Jr., Matt Kenseth, Jimmy Johnson, eventually Kurt Busch and Kevin Harvick. I mean, they kind of had an identity problem. I mean, Tony Stewart was the guy who didn't care what anybody thought and if somebody wronged him, he would get in their face and probably have a fight. I mean, Kevin Harvick was the same way for a while, Kurt Busch, but Jeff Gordon is the Rainbow Warrior. He's one of the GOATs of the sport. He's Jimmy Johnson, 7-time champion. Dale Jr., probably the most popular driver in NASCAR history. All these guys left, and NASCAR had an identity problem. I mean, they had Chase Elliott, but up until 2020, 2021, Chase Elliott was not a consistent winner. Kyle Larson, when he was with Ganassi, before he went to Hendrick, when he was with Ganassi, he won, but he struggled. He didn't win all the time like he does now. They had a problem and they were struggling replacing some of these guys because those guys, Dale Jr. in 2017 did not have a great season. I think he finished 20 something in points, but it was Dale Jr. So Dale Jr. running 21st in at New Hampshire drove in more viewers than what we had for the past couple seasons. So NASCAR had a problem with that up, and I think the next gen car just being something new brought in a lot more viewers. But I think Hendrick going out and getting Kyle Larson, a lot of narratives about him, but some positive, some negative. Chase Elliott's kind of taken the Dale Jr. mantle of being the most popular driver. I think we lack the true villain. I think Denny Hamlin is trying to do that, and I think he likes being a villain. So
Denny Hamlin looks like the world's easiest villain to beat. Denny Hamlin. I could he's like rookie mode villain. Probably like first world Mario type villain.
Yeah, but so that's the biggest problem NASCAR's had the past couple of years. They've done a decent job replacing the heroes, the Jimmy Johnson, the Jeff Gordon, the Dale Juniors. But
just keep giving Ricky Stenhouse a job. He'll eventually piss everyone off again.
Well, that's the thing about Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch was
Rowdy Busch.
He was public enemy number one from like 2008 when he spun Dale Jr. at Richmond, all the way up until he left Gibbs in 2022. He was public enemy number one, but then once he went back to Chevy, everybody started liking him again. So I don't know. I mean,
I still hate him for the sake of.
I think most people do, but I think he's not the number one villain anymore.
I kind of like that villain character. Kyle's funny. He's not having a good year.
Kyle's overdriving the car. That's the biggest thing. I mean, Kyle Busch is having the same problem that a lot of these drivers around the playoff cut line are having. Is Kyle Busch has a 20th place car and he's trying to win. He's trying to run top 5, top 10, and he's overdriving the car. And so I think a lot of these times aren't exactly. I mean, Sonoma we saw. Kyle Busch got wrecked on the final lap, but I think a lot of times, Kyle Busch is overdriving the car, trying to do better than it's capable, and it's causing these incidents.
If you look, and I've got it pulled up right here, I'll show it in a minute. Kyle Busch is currently 17th in points. He has 2 top 5s, and I think 5 top 10s all year. That seems relatively low for a guy of Mr. Busch's stature.
And then if you look on the playoff standings with the Suarez and the the Austin Cindric win, he's 19th in the points and he's 46 points out. I mean, he's almost in a must-win situation. I mean, he could easily make up those 50 points, but he's also relying on Joey Logano, who's gotten progressively better as the season's gone on. He's relying on Bubba Wallace, Chris Buescher, who should have 2 or 3 wins. He's relying on those guys to start coming back to him in points, and I don't know if that's going to happen.
Well, don't worry. If you keep Joey Logano around for long enough, he's bound to run into somebody. So you'll be just fine. I feel like I've seen Joey Logano run into more cars than I have actually seen him finish races.
Well, Joey Logano is a really good driver. Joey Logano is one of those drivers. He gets into like 2 or 3 wrecks a season, or some, or
2 or 3 wrecks a Sunday afternoon.
Well, but the problem is they're the most memorable. I'm telling you, Joey Logano, people are going to remember this for the next 10 weeks. I hate Joey Logano. Remember what he did to Chase Elliott at
yes, exactly.
Because
Chase lost a tire, man.
There's a drive. Noah Gragson could get into twice as many wrecks as Joey Logano, but
who cares about Noah Gragson, man? I couldn't even tell you where Noah Gragson finished today. I couldn't even tell you what car number he drove. JC can, but
Yeah,
I
well,
can't even tell
he
you.
drives for
Couldn't
Stewart
even
Haas.
I couldn't even tell you Noah Gregson's car. What brand car he drives.
But so Jerry Logano just has a habit of getting in the memorable wrecks. I mean, you probably don't know. 2014 Richmond spring. It might have been spring. He, Keselowski, Matt Kenseth. There was one or two other. Jeff Gordon might have been in it. The cluster fluff that caused, and it was memorable. And I think that was the only Joey Logano's only record. 2015, Joey Logano had the best car, and Joey Logano should have won the championship. He got into 2 wrecks in the playoffs. What did that cause? He wrecked Matt Kenseth, and Matt Kenseth came back and wrecked him at Martinsville, and probably the most memorable payback in NASCAR history. I mean, it's
Deserved.
it's Joey Logano.
Joey Logano, because when I came in with Joey Logano, the way I was advertised to him was it's an even number year, so that means Joey Logano is going to be just fine.
Yeah, well,
because apparently he does fine. I'm learning more. Maybe 2022, he might not have been the best driver, but he just got lucky towards the end. Maybe he wrecked a few people.
I think capitalized is a more accurate word than lucky. I wouldn't consider Joey Logano the best driver of 2022, but he capitalized when he needed to.
I would never consider Joey Logano. I feel like Joey Logano is probably like the most like if I had $1 million bet on a NASCAR driver to get a ticket from an actual police officer driving down the road, it's Joey Logano.
I wouldn't put it past the Busch brothers. You don't remember prime like 2012 to 2018.
Now Kyle Busch, I could understand him getting behind a slow Prius compact and then just
dude pre like 2014 Kurt Busch was worse than Kyle. He DUIs, the anger management.
How do you as a NASCAR driver get it deep? I feel like
that's what ended his deal at Roush. He was at Roush in the '97. He was off winning the championship. Won the championship in 04, and then by the end of 2005, he was out at Roush because of that.
Decided to do the most dangerous thing you could ever do in a car.
And then went to Penske. And I think people don't remember. Kurt Busch was not that great at Penske. I always thought he would do better at Penske than he did. And then, 2011, 2012, 2011, 2012 Kurt Busch with the 22 and James Finch deal was something that I don't think Kurt Busch probably looks at in his therapy classes. So.
It makes a lot of sense why he didn't do well at Penske because Penske drives a Ford. I do.
Well, it was Dodge.
I do simple. Oh, really?
Yeah.
What happened to Dodge? I want to Dodge racing.
Dodge left the series in 2012. No, because Penske had announced in early 2012 that they were leaving Dodge to go to Ford for the new Gen 6 car. The big stocky cars that they ran in 2013 from on. And Dodge tried for a while to get somebody like a flagship team, like a Hendrick, like a Penske, like those type of teams to build around, and they couldn't. So Dodge just left the series. And ironically, Brad Keselowski won the championship in the last race in Dodge in the Cup Series. So that was interesting.
I mean, as someone who drives a Ford, who has dealt with a check engine light way too many times, because I live in such a small town, and Ford and Toyota are sister companies, I have to get it serviced at the Toyota. And how many times I've been stuck in a crappy Corolla rental car, just as like a personal driver experience, as someone who drives a car, someone who drives a Ford, I feel I sympathize with guys like Brad Keselowski and Chris Buescher because, when they win their races, they have to not only win their race, but then immediately go to AutoZone and get their free check engine light figured out. And it's always the same thing. It's always the exact same problem with them. It's because when they fuel up their tank, the little pressure system in there, they got to replace it all the time because Ford is terrible.
Ford has definitely been the third wheel this season. They do have the new dark horse, and I think, but Toyota had the new body too, and they both were. Ford just Ford hasn't. I would argue Ford still hasn't completely figured out the next gen, but they really
No,
haven't figured out
I
the
think
dark
this season
horse.
has proved it as well. Ford is kind of right now in stock car racing clueless.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I mean, 2022, Joey Logano won the championship. Blaney had a good year. Briscoe made the round of 8. Harvick won those back-to-back races. Wouldn't realize it was his final two. But 2023, Blaney wins the championship. Buescher wins a couple races. Keselowski comes back and makes the playoffs. Logano does fine. Um, they've been fine. I guess that's the right word. They've been fine. They haven't been downright terrible. I mean, they've won the last 2 championships, and I think people like to forget about that. But Ford is really really good at the short tracks, and that I mean, and right now Phoenix, if as long as Phoenix keeps on being the season finale up until probably 2026, we'll get into that in a little bit, but Ford will always have a really good chance of winning the championship because Penske and all these teams are really good at short tracks.
And that makes a lot of sense because Ford, the less they have to drive, the better they're going to be.
It's the straight line speed. Ford is behind Ford is behind Chevy and Toyota in the straight line speed. That's why they struggle sometimes at the mile and a halves and those types of tracks. But they make up for it on the short track because the cars turn
Ford's
better.
turn even just driving a regular Ford, Ford's turn very well.
So and that's where they're better off on the short tracks. And you know what they play? I mean, it's working out so far because they've won both championships in the next gen course. So, I mean,
to an extent, you could say that, but not this season because the short tracks have been dominated by guys like Christopher Bell and over at Joe Gibbs. Joe Gibbs has had a phenomenal year on the short tracks.
They have, and I would still and Hendrick and Joe Gibbs are clearing away the best 2 teams right now, but Blaney won Iowa. Iowa's a very, very similar track to Phoenix.
That was the first time we were in Iowa too, if I'm correct.
Yeah, Iowa's one of my 5 favorite tracks. I've been preaching for Iowa to be on the Cup. I mean, I was heartbroken when they repaved the track because I remember 2018, 2019 Xfinity with Christopher Bell, Chase Briscoe, those guys winning those races. It was a really good track, and then they repaved, and I was like, oh, it's going to be like everybody else. It's going to be a run groove track, and it wasn't. I just wish they need like Jeff Gluck and Jordan Bianchi said in their podcast Sunday night last week. They need to just bite the bullet and pave all the way to the top of both turns, just to keep it even and just to extend the passing lane a little bit.
I didn't get to catch Iowa. I was I had some other things I needed to do. Unfortunately, that's my one kind of negative. Sundays is a busy day for me. So unfortunately, and Sundays sometimes the Sunday afternoon nap is a little bit too long. I was lucky enough today that my nap ended right at the beginning of the final stage. So I was thinking to myself, okay, we've got like 110 laps to go on a short track. I can sit here and watch, and then of course Joey Logano just decides he's going to piss me off and ruin my Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, Penske had a good run today. The finishes won't be what it deserves. Joey Logano, I think, was in the top 10 when he and Chase Elliott had their incident.
Mm-hmm.
And then Blaney was second when Michael McDowell decided it was a good idea to dive bomb him into turn 1 and take them both out. But see, you're going to see that with the next. I mean, especially now coming up through the last 8 or so races until the playoffs. These drivers that are outside the playoffs, especially that can't really point their way in, are going to get more and more desperate. That was a move of desperation. Michael McDowell was 21st, 22nd in the points, 110, 120 points out of the playoffs, and that was a move of desperation because he saw Christopher Bell leading. He could see it in his grasp, and he just dive bombed in the corner. And like Ryan Blaney said after the race, it was like he understands why he did it, but apologizing doesn't make it right.
Who did he hit? Christopher. You said he didn't hit Christopher Bell.
But... No, he hit Ryan Blaney. So Ryan Blaney was in the Ryan Blaney didn't get the finish that he deserved today for Penske because Michael McDowell decided it was a good idea to come to dive bomb him into turn one in a damp slick racetrack.
Okay. So yeah, Penske they didn't have the finish they liked. Overall, a pretty good day. Guys like Blaney and Logano, they were in there consistently fighting. It was again just a weird day, especially for these cars like Hendricks. I feel like today, and I might just be completely wrong on this, but today feels like, and I feel like we're kind of getting to this point now where this is the time where you're going to see some of these guys at the end, like John Hunter Nemechek got a top 10 today. Stewart Haas Racing, they're not even going to be a company tomorrow, or in December. They won't even be a NASCAR, a stock car company. I think they have an F1 team.
Yes, no, we'll especially get into that later, but
because Mr. Chase Briscoe fan over here has
Haas will remain in the series. Gene Haas will. He's going to keep one of the charters, and he's going to run one car in Cup and keep the two Haas cars in Xfinity. But yeah, Tony Stewart's out. It seems like of NASCAR, he has many other priorities. But yeah, that was a move of silly season that you heard rumblings about, but you didn't really expect. I thought Haas would stay in the sport, but I thought that meant going to sponsor a team full time and at Front Row or somebody like that.
I was very surprised because of how it seemed like Stewart Haas had a plan for the future. At least from what I could tell. Maybe it was too reliant on Chase Briscoe. Chase has yet to get a win this season. You predicted he only wins one or two races this year. You didn't.
I didn't predict him to win a race this year.
And you're probably the biggest Chase Briscoe fan.
I thought Chase Briscoe. I think I'm kind of accurate on where I thought Chase Briscoe would be. I mean, I thought he would run somewhere between 15th and 18th in points. I thought this was a building block year, just with Harvick retiring, Almirola retiring, just a building block year, get everything right. I thought downsize to 2 or 3 cars and build for the future because I thought and I still think Chase Briscoe was their franchise driver. And he's 16th in points. He's 18th in the playoff standings because they've had 2 surprise winners, but he's about. I mean, it's a big improvement from last year, and I think the 3 main SHR cars, Ryan Preece was out of the ride regardless of what happened with SHR. Mm-hmm. But Noah Gragson's had a much more consistent year, has not wrecked as much as he did last year with Legacy Motor Club. Josh Berry has had a solid rookie year, especially
top 3 today for Berry.
Especially the last couple races. I mean, up until the Sonoma and the Gateway races, he had a streak of top 15s in a row. He was building. Chase Briscoe was building. I mean, and so it is unfortunate that right when it seems Stewart Haas Racing was starting to turn a page and build for the future, that's when they decided to close their doors. But I mean, if your owners aren't invested in the sport, then they're never going to get that much better. And that's what we saw from, I think, Dale Jr. might have said it on the Dale Jr. download, or Kevin Harvick, or one of these podcasts that said it was like, with the next gen car, owners have to be invested. They
Mm-hmm.
can't be distant owners like Gene Haas has been and like Tony Stewart has especially been last couple years. So I think they were getting better. I don't think they would have ever got back to where they were prior to 2020.
Well, the entire, especially right now with where we are, the in NASCAR, kind of like what you've been saying, the entirety of figuring out how to get better is to figure out how to adapt. You've got to be able, especially with the next gen. And I give crap to Ford, but they have won the past two championships.
Yeah.
Um, uh, like you said, Hendricks bringing in guys like Kyle Larson. There are small things and bigger things these teams have been doing to have been showing they're adapting. And I guess Stewart Haas was kind of ending up on the wrong end of the stick when it comes to those acquisitions.
They were trying to adapt. They just weren't. It just wasn't the right people that were trying to adapt. I mean, they had competition director Greg Zipadelli, who is a championship winning crew chief, but he won his championships back in when it was Gen 4, I believe. I mean, when it was 2002 and 2005 with Tony Stewart. Had guys like Joe Custer's going to be the team president of Haas factory team next year, and that car's not going to run better than 25th. I mean, they're going to be behind Wick Rear Racing and Spire and all those cars because it's going to be a shell of already a shell. I mean, Stewart Haas Racing right now is a shell of their former selves, and that Haas factory team is going to be a shell of what's currently Stewart Haas.
Where will the Haas factory be headed?
It's going to be the same. It's going to be in the same shop. It's going. I would venture to say Ford's going to give them a pretty lucrative offer. I mean, they're losing two charters most likely now to other manufacturers, so they want to make sure they can keep one. And almost more importantly, they have two Xfinity rides, and Ford they have the two SHR cars. They have AM Racing, one car there, and then they have a couple cars for Ryan Sieg Racing.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have a lot of cars in Xfinity compared to Toyota and Chevrolet. So I think Ford is going to do whatever they can to ensure that Haas remains in the Ford camp and for the future. And I don't know how long that future is. There has been rumors that Haas is not in this for the long haul. They're just in it to maintain a charter to win. So the asking price for the charters right now about $25-30 million, but that's because there are four on the market, and they don't. And so in 2 or 3 years, when there might be no charters on the market, the price for and the charters could be 50, 60, 70 million dollars even then, and so that could be the long play. But I don't, Gene. I don't think this is going to be a competitive ride at all. Even if they put Kyle Larson or Chase Elliott in the car, I don't think it's. I think it's a glorified advertisement. Is what they said on in his press conference, basically.
Well, he's trying to make a profit, and I understand that. When $20 more million is a potential there, you might go for the $20 million. I would at least.
Not when in a year from now you can make 50.
So it leaves some questions, especially for a guy like Josh Berry. Josh Berry, as you said, in his rookie season, he might be a fun piece to play with. I feel like he's a fun little driver for these other teams, especially other Ford companies who are looking to keep guys in Ford cars.
Having Rodney Childers back him, and it seems like Rodney Childers he won't go anywhere without Josh Berry. That's going to pop up Josh Berry a lot, and especially for these teams like Front Row, Wood Brothers. I mean, even Chevrolet or Toyota teams, these Josh Berry and especially Rodney Childers is going to be a hot commodity.
And Josh Berry, he's had a good couple of weeks. He finished third today. He's put together some strands. I feel like he could be a fun piece to play with. Noah Gragson. I feel like he could be. He might get a spot next year. I'm not really entirely sure.
Hey, I think
Obviously,
he'll have a spot next year.
the big piece is Chase Briscoe, and that does tie into another facet of NASCAR silly season is that Martin Truex Jr. has finally announced that he will collect his Social Security checks and call it a career. I think he's 47.
He's up there.
So he is. He's finally called it a career. So that leaves a Joe Gibbs car wide open right there for a guy like Chase Briscoe to take it. I know that's kind of like your dream over there, JC. You're kind of salivating at the mouth at a Joe Gibbs car.
They'll announce it on Tuesday. Is what Bob Hockus just said about an hour ago. Obviously, it's kind of a formality at this point because Christopher Bell pulled Tom Holland, but I think it's a great opportunity. I think Chase Briscoe is the best driver on the market, so both the best driver in the best team, and we'll see what happens. I mean, the worst Joe Gibbs racing car is still seventh or eighth best car in the Cup Series.
If you look at the standings right now, I mean, we can see it has been a Joe Gibbs dream this year. Christopher Bell has tied for the most wins this season.
Yeah.
Denny Hamlin also has 3 different wins this season. Truex, he doesn't have any wins, but he's 4th in points.
Truex is the model of consistency the last couple of seasons.
So yeah, Joe Gibbs Racing has had a great year. I expect them. Honestly, I'm kind of expecting a Joe Gibbs a win this year based on the way the season has gone. Based on the fact that I hate Toyota so much, it's got to be Joe Gibbs now. Because sports never likes to go my way. So, I agree with what you're saying. You put Briscoe, one of the best drivers on the market, in one of the best teams, and who knows what can happen next year.
Yeah. So Chase Briscoe has a lot backing him. Chase Briscoe is a veteran. Chase Briscoe has a win in the Cup Series. Chase Briscoe has made a deep playoff run in 2022. That I think Chase Briscoe, a lot of people don't give him the credit that he will. He's going to prove a lot of people wrong next year because they just see Chase Briscoe as running 16th in points. They see Chase Briscoe last year doesn't. I don't say last year doesn't count, but last year he had a 120-point penalty. That just derailed the entire season, and they were kind of the R&D car. But the moment he joined SHR is when they started going downhill. I mean, if you compare him, Chase Briscoe and Kevin Harvick in their real comparable season, Chase Briscoe outran him. Chase Briscoe finished 9th in points. Kevin Harvick finished 16th. Chase Briscoe won. Kevin Harvick also won. But Kevin Harvick is considered one of the greatest drivers that's ever lived. And when in a non-rookie, non-complete penalty type year, Chase Briscoe matched him. And that's when Chase Briscoe was in his 2nd season in Cup. I'm not naive enough to think that he goes out and just wins a championship right away, but I think it's possible. And I think and I'm interested to see what I think he's like Christopher Bell. Obviously they both come from dirt. Obviously they're similar. They're the same age, if not a year apart.
They're both very young.
But see that's the biggest thing that Joe Gibbs wanted. Chase Briscoe brings in sponsorship. That's not the reason he got the ride, but it's an added bonus. And Chase Briscoe is a guy that comes in and he's established. It's not going. I mean, Ty Gibbs is the best developmental driver Joe Gibbs has had since Joey Logano, and I would Christopher Bell too. But even Ty Gibbs it's taken him 2 seasons to win, and he still hasn't won yet. Joe Gibbs does not seem like Joe Gibbs wanted somebody that it would take a while to win. And I think Chase Briscoe is a guy that's still relatively young. He'll be if Joe Gibbs will have him, he'll be in the car for a decade at least.
If Joe Gibbs does Christopher Bell, he'll take Chase Briscoe as well. I feel like both of those guys, you put them side by side and you let them go, and
they cut from the same cloth. They are cut from the same cloth. They came up together. They on the dirt track in all these series. They've been neck and neck this entire time, and Chase Briscoe is going to win multiple races next year.
If he's given and he is given the Joe Gibbs car, right? It has been announced, or that's what Christopher Bell leaked.
Chris, it was NASCAR silly season is a little bit it's not as great as it used to be, just based off announcements, because social media has ruined that a little bit. Social media is still awesome, and silly season's still awesome. I'm not going to go there with social media, but it does suck that. But everybody knew Chase Briscoe was going to the 19 or the 18. Maybe they go back to the 18. But yeah, I felt bad for Christopher Bell because he the moment he realized he did it, it was such a genuine. I messed up, but no. So Bob Pockrass reported about an hour ago, I think it was 9:30 Eastern time, that Joe Gibbs has an announcement set for Tuesday, and it is a driver announcement. So more than likely, it is Chase Briscoe being announced to the Joe Gibbs Racing.
Or it could be me.
Or it could be Chase Elliott. He only said Chase. He never said Chase Briscoe. Maybe Chase Elliott. Maybe then there's a ride at Hendrick Motorsports that opens up.
I'd take the Hendricks job. I think that's what Chase Elliott said earlier today, in his post New Hampshire press conference, that he is here to stay and he is here to stay at Hendricks. I was a little bit confused as like wait a minute, what do you mean Chase Elliott? He's not retiring, and then okay, now that okay, yeah. So I think that the writing is pretty much on the wall that Chase Briscoe is going to Joe Gibbs and Chase Elliott staying at Hendricks, and I feel like for Chase, it'd make no sense for a guy like Chase Elliott to go to Joe Gibbs.
Well, it was never a serious rumor. It's something that guys like Chase Briscoe and Christopher Bell have had to play into because they have not officially announced it. So you saw all yesterday through practice and stuff, they asking Chase Briscoe, and he said, well, you know what? I guess I have to talk to Mr. Hendrick and see if the 9 car's open, because Chase Elliott's going to Gibbs, and no shot Chase Elliott's going to Gibbs. It's just the joke is he's not going to announce it. They have an announcement plan, and it's a running joke.
And Chase has made it pretty clear. Chase made it pretty clear today that he's planning to stay in that number 9 car.
Chase Elliott will not leave Hendrick unless it's for Ray Evernham, and Ray Evernham will not come back to the sport. So,
or unless it's too much money that he could refuse.
I think Hendrick can match any dollar.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I feel like Hendrick's probably got the most money in the sport. Yeah. So with Briscoe on the way, where are these Stewart Haas cars going? So
I'll start with the charters. I think that's a little easier. So I think there are 5 charters I wouldn't say on the move, but there are going to be 5 charters that are somewhat different next year. Obviously, Haas factory team is keeping a charter. We'll get into the driver of that in a moment. Front Row has already bought one of the charters. I think the other 2 SHR charters will be Richard Childress getting a 3rd charter, and I think 2311 gets a 3rd charter. And I know a lot of people are thinking, what happened? Trackhouse. I think Trackhouse buys a charter from Colleague. Colleague Racing has 2 charters right now. They won one charter with Daniel Hemrick in the 31 car full time, and then the second charter is the 16 with AJ Allmendinger and friends, basically. But I think the 16 charter gets sold to Colleague, and Shane Van Gisbergen goes full time Cup racing and for Trackhouse. But I think the 16 will still be around next year for especially the road courses. But I do not think I think it goes back to like kind of what it was in 2022 and 2021. It'll be a road course car, and AJ Allmendinger will get in the car, and maybe you see Christian Eckes or some of these other Chevrolet drivers in the Colleague and Trackhouse pipeline. In a couple of years, maybe you see Connor Zilic. I mean, even, but I think, so I think Haas Factory Team 2311, Front Row, and Richard Childress get the 4 SHR charters, and then Trackhouse buys a charter from Colleague. And then, so the SHR drivers in particular, Haas Factory Team, it feels easy just to put Cole Custer. He's an Xfinity Series champion, but his dad is Joe Custer, who is the president of Stewart Haas Racing. He's going to be the president of Haas Factory Team. It feels Cole Custer will come to the Cup Series. 0041-0. I don't know what the number was going to be. I would be surprised if it's not one of those three numbers. Shane Van Gisbergen, I already said. Trackhouse. He's not an SHR driver, but Noah Gragson. I think Noah Gragson goes to Richard Childress. Johnny Morris, Pass Pro Shops. They foot the bill for Noah Gragson. Noah Gragson doesn't need the money, but I think it helps. It helps entice a lot of these upper teams, and I think Noah Gragson will end up at Richard Childress Racing in some way next year, whether it isn't buying a third charter or maybe Austin Dillon retires and takes a management role at Richard Childress Racing. But I think Noah Gragson will go to RCR, and I think Josh Berry goes to Front Row Motorsports and Rodney Childress, and they build up the 34 car.
I'd like Barry at front row. Seems like the next step for Josh Berry. I don't know if Dillon's retiring though. I feel like that would be more.
It's a rumor that's been around. It's not a rumor that's been brought up by Pacris or Bianchi or Jeff Gluck or somebody reputable, but it has gone through the. Austin Dillon's running 30th in points. He's a good driver, but I think he realizes it's time to move on, and I think it's destiny for him to be the successor to Richard Childress running the team. He is his grandson. That's why he probably kept the ride a little longer than most people would. But I think Austin Dillon will eventually become the owner or president or whatever they call it at Richard Childress Racing. So does that mean he still drives when that happens? Or Noah Gragson maybe goes to the 3 core? It's not going to be the 3. I think they'd renumber it to 31, 33, 29, something like that. And maybe that gives a third ride for Austin Hill if they still buy a third charter.
Well, you did mention it, the points. I think this is probably the best time to put up the points for those wondering. Austin Dillon is actually 32nd in points. He's got 0 top 3s or 0 wins, 0 top 3s, 2 top 5s, and 2 top 10s. So not been the year for a guy like Austin Dillon. You take a look up here. It's tied between Hendricks, Chase Elliott, and Kyle Larson, each with 620. Larson had a better stage day today because he actually got to finish his race without Joey Logano.
Stage points saved a lot of drivers today. Joey Logano ended up finishing 35th. He had a bunch of stage points that kind of managed him in the cut line. Ryan Blaney had stage points. A lot of these drivers that you saw running up front did not get the finishes that they deserved. Stage points helped them a bunch today.
Yeah, stage points were very
beneficial.
I feel like in a strange race like today, with the rain, with the wrecks, with the starts and the stops and the caution flags and the red flags everywhere, stage points were going to be effective today. And I feel like a lot of these guys, especially a guy like Denny Hamlin, I don't see his name very high here, but I feel like he had a pretty successful day, all things considering.
Denny Hamlin won stage 2. I
Yeah.
believe it was stage 2, maybe stage 1. He won a stage today, but that helped because he ended up finishing 24th. So he didn't have a finish that he deserved. I believe Bell, Hamlin, and Blaney were probably the class of the field today. But yeah, so stage points helped Blaney and Bell. Blaney and Hamlin.
Yeah. Christopher Bell ended up winning. If you see here, you've got 3 Joe Gibbs in the top 6, filing half 4, 5, or 3, 4, and 6. Tyler Reddick with XI Racing,
23-11.
23-11. I can't count, so I would not have been able to guess that. William Byron with Hendricks. He's not with Hendricks, is he?
Yes. So William Byron's with Hendrick. Blaney Penske, he's the highest running. 8th place is the highest Penske driver.
8th place is also the highest Ford driver as well.
Yes.
So.
Ross Chastain's with Trackhouse. Brad Keselowski's with his own team, Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing. Ty Gibbs is the Gibbs driver, and he's the guy. He's what I was telling you about. He's 11th in points. He's doing a whole lot better. You see 2 stage wins, 309 laps led, all that. But yeah, they didn't want another driver. Because if they put Chandler Smith in the car, Chandler Smith would probably be running about 16th to 20th in points, and they wanted a driver that can come in and win. So that's kind of the point proven is with Ty Gibbs. Ty Gibbs he's a future champion of the sport. It's just going to take a couple years for him.
He hasn't won a race yet. I don't expect him to actually win one this year, but you look, he's got in 18 starts, he's got 4 top 3s,
4 top 5s and 8 top 10s.
Okay, 4 top 5s and 8 top 10s. A very successful season. Alex Bowman, I could not tell you what team he's on.
Hendrick.
Okay, Alex Bowman, Hendrick. He's just above the cut line. As mentioned previously, our friend Daniel Suarez, the newest American citizen in the NASCAR Cup Series, and Mr. Baby Nepotism himself, Austin Cindric, each have kind of stolen a win. Daniel Suarez's win was stolen much more entertainingly in Atlanta. Am I correct? He won in Atlanta?
Yeah, they both put themselves in the right position, but they want – Suarez won a plate race, or I guess you can call it a plate race at Atlanta. And then Austin Cindric had a really good car at Gateway and
Illinois, and he just ended up
right
time.
Yeah,
kind of like Briscoe today. He was in the right spot, right time, and got himself a top 3. So because of guys like Cindric and Suarez, we have this strange cut. So I think actually it is Joey Logano.
Yes.
We here in NASCAR fandom call him Satan. I'm just kidding. I'm just still upset at this afternoon. So guys like Bubba Wallace, Chase Briscoe, he did jump today in his points. Obviously, that top 3 definitely helped him. Helped him even jump the name Kyle Busch. So you see Josh Berry is right outside the cut line. So with 8 races to go, we've got a pretty entertaining finish, especially with you look and see how close just 14, 15, and 16 are.
Yeah, Logano's 13 ahead of Bubba Wallace and then 25 ahead of Chase Briscoe. And all that can be made up in a race. We saw the Chicago Street Course last year. That was a topsy-turvy race, and So anything could happen there. Obviously Daytona. So Joey Logano's definitely trending in the right direction. I definitely think if I had to predict, I would put Joey Logano in the playoffs over Bubba Wallace and Chase Briscoe and Kyle Busch right now. But we're just arguing about Joey Logano. Being above those guys. What's to say Kyle Busch or one of those guys don't go out and win a race? I think Joey Logano is still in a situation where I'm not comfortable about him making the playoffs unless he has a win, unless he can jump Busher and Bowman and those guys in points.
Well, so I feel like these guys, maybe not Chris Buescher to say, because he's still got a pretty hefty. He's got, I think, 40 some points. He's got a pretty safe lead right now. You take a look at a guy like Logano, a guy like Bubba Wallace, a guy like Chase Briscoe, a guy like Kyle Busch. I'd even argue maybe Josh Berry. One win jumps them pretty nicely. And
So yeah, I would say
so taking a look out of these guys, out of a guy like Logano, Wallace, Briscoe, Busch, and even Barry, who do you trust to win in 8 races? Who do you trust to possibly get a win?
Joey Logano. I think Joey Logano is a two-time champion. Joey Logano, he is building back up from the abysmal start he had to begin the year. I don't. I know some of the races off the top of my head that's remaining before the playoffs. I know
I can pull
Nashville
it up
next.
right here.
Yeah, I
Pull
know
it up right here
Nashville's
for you.
next. Okay. Um,
Next
Nash.
week we are in Nashville with
Yeah,
the 399 Ally 400.
I think that's a Hendrick win.
I'll take a Hendrick win.
I think it's Kyle Lawson.
I think it's Chase Elliott, but that's a different argument.
The Chicago Street Course is no, but I don't think you can. I don't think anybody can feel comfortable making a prediction there. Pocono. Richmond is probably Joey Logano's best shot at winning, just being a short track similar to Iowa and Phoenix and Gateway and those type of tracks. But I feel more comfortable with Joey Logano. Bubba Wallace has proven he's a really good super speedway racer, so I'd look at Daytona for him. If you look at Chase Briscoe, road course, he's really good at the road courses. Indianapolis is obviously going to mean a lot to him. I would look if I was predicting Chase Briscoe to win. I would look at the regular season finale on Darlington. He finished top 5 at Darlington. He and his teammate Josh Berry both had probably the fastest 2 cars on the long run. I know they finished 3rd and 5th respectively, but they were catching Brad and Chris Buescher and Tyler Reddick even before the incident. So I would put Chase Briscoe and Josh Berry. They probably have the best chance at winning there. Kyle Busch can win anywhere too. That's one thing. And if I'm Joey Logano, I'm not feeling comfortable because anyway we can see Kyle Busch come back to Kyle Busch. The Kyle Busch we all know and probably hate.
At any given moment, Rowdy Busch can just become rowdy again. And
Yeah, so I still think I'm comfortable. If there's no new winner, if it's just strictly off points, I think Joey Logano is probably who I would pick. But yeah, I think there's going to be a new winner. So even if I'm Chris Buescher or Alex Bowman, Ty Gibbs is 82 above. I would still trust Ty Gibbs, but if I'm Alex Bowman had an awful day. It wasn't necessarily his fault with the mechanical stuff, but he's back in the strike zone. So if one new winner and puts Chris Buescher on the cut line, we could see Alex Bowman feeling nervous, and that's the problem with Alex Bowman. Alex Bowman's probably been the most consistent driver in the Cup Series, but Alex Bowman has not proven he can win a race. Alex Bowman's not even gotten close to winning a race. He's led 6 laps the entire season in a Hendrick car, and he's doing really good at finishing the races, which is why he's healthy lead over the cut line. But if we get if Joey Logano wins a race and then Kyle Busch or somebody like that wins a race, puts him on the cut line, I'm worried because I don't think Alex Bowman can go out there and just win a race right now.
He has not shown it,
No.
definitely, especially with those only six laps led. I feel like Chicago is going to be a telltale sign of what the cut line is going to look like. I think you're right. Super speedway. Anytime you put the word super speedway, anytime you put 300 laps, 400 miles worth of racing.
It's a super speedway, but it's not like Daytona or Talladega.
Yeah, but anytime those get mentioned, the name Hendricks Motorsports is going to come to mind.
Yeah.
I feel like July 7th, Chicago, we're going to see a very, very interesting race, especially on that cut line where you could possibly see somebody like Kyle Busch, someone like a Joey Logano, someone like a Chase Briscoe come out there and put it all on the line. And I think, it doesn't even take a winner. Like we could have a Christopher Bell win his fourth of the year. We could have a Ryan Blaney win. I think his fourth. Has he won 4 this year?
No, he's won one.
Blaney's won 3.
He's won one race.
So Blaney win his second. But it's going to depend on what that top 5, what that top 3, what stage points look like, how everyone's day is. I'm not sure about Pinoco. Pinoco looks long, only 160 laps, 400 miles. That's a long track. I wouldn't trust Logano, or I wouldn't trust Logano on a long track, nor would I in Indianapolis. So I feel like Joey, if he needs Chicago to go his way. And I think if Chicago goes his way, you start feeling very confident.
If I'm Joey Logano, Bubba Wallace isn't a great road course racer. Chase Briscoe's much better than Logano. Kyle Busch is probably a better road course racer than Logano. But we don't know what the cut line will be going into that race. I mean, Chase Briscoe could gain 5 or 10 points again today at Nashville and be within striking distance and really ruffle Logano's feathers. Kyle Busch is 45 out, but Kyle Busch, I mean, he could make up 10 or 15 points at Nashville and be within striking distance at Chicago. But I think Joey Logano's best bet is that a new winner does not win at Chicago, because I think there are opportunities at the other tracks, but I think Chicago and Daytona are the 2 races that everybody is circling as this is the track that can upset the playoffs. And if Joey Logano can make it through Chicago and then eventually make it through Daytona, that's what's going to be the best bet for him.
Yes. Now, as the resident Chase Briscoe fan, are you any confident that he pops up and wins, or not win a race, but at least wins the cut line and potentially sees him sneak in as that 16th or 15th car?
I think he can. I think today proves the resiliency of that team. I think more than anything, he needs to manage some of these races that aren't his. Nashville has not been a statistically good track for Chase Briscoe. But instead of finishing 25th, Chase Briscoe just needs
a top 15.
If Chase Briscoe can finish top 15 at Nashville, if Chase Briscoe can finish top 15 at Pocono, scroll down a little bit, a top 15 at Michigan, I think he can put himself in position. Because if you look, I mean, Chase Briscoe has a good chance of even going out and winning the Chicago Street Course, but he can put himself in a good position to finish really well there. Indianapolis is his home track. Chase Briscoe would do nothing and would do anything to win there. Richmond's a good track for him, short track. Daytona, you never know what can happen. In Darlington, he finished top 5 there earlier this season, and it was on pace. So I think more than anything, he just needs to not put himself in a hole, like we saw today. The rain definitely helped, but I think just not putting himself in a hole, um, what happened at Iowa and Sonoma, especially some of these tracks they were beyond his control. But I think he was going to finish top 10, top 15 at Sonoma, then got in the wreck and finished 35th. That lost him 20 something points. At least. So, you take that race out of it, and Chase Briscoe's probably he may be above the cut line. He may be 5 points out. So those races are just absolutely cannot happen. He has to put himself in the position to capitalize off the race, because it's not. If he goes out there and finishes 25th at Nashville, it doesn't matter what unless he wins, it doesn't matter how good he finishes at Chicago or Richmond or Indianapolis or tracks like that, because he's not going to put. He's holding him. It's just going to be a net zero.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what he needs to manage the races that he's not as strong at, and then put himself in a position to capitalize on the races that he is.
And as we saw earlier in the year, Chase gets a little ambitious at times.
Chase has the same problem that I was talking about with Kyle Busch. Is he has 20th place race cars and up. He's done a whole lot better about it this year. But a lot of times Chase Briscoe puts the cars trying to get into the top 10 when it's just not, the car is not capable of doing that. But he's realized that a lot this year, and he's taking 20th place cars, and he's getting 12th, 13th place finishes, and he's not content with it, but he's realizing that that's about as good as he can do.
Right, but then you also see at the same time, yeah, sure, he has some of those 10, 12. He had a 2 today, but then he's got a 35. He's got a did not finish. He's got several of these low because of the fact, and that's I think what you're talking about is, hey, maybe we don't need a 3, maybe we don't need a 2, maybe we don't need a 7. I'll take a 16 or an 18, just not a 35.
Well, and that's the biggest thing about and I actually think, and I was talking to you about it at the beginning of the season, I think he's done a good job about it this year. That happened. He has 1, maybe 2 DNFs this season. He's gotten a whole lot better about it this year, and he's adapting to it, and that's the biggest thing that he's improved on this season. Had it been a season in the past, he'd probably be 21st in the points because he had 2 or 3 more DNFs. So I think he's capitalizing on where the core is allowing him to be, and we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm optimistic. I don't think I wouldn't. If I had to bet, I would not put him in the playoffs. But I do think he is setting himself up to be in a position where he can challenge for a playoffs position. And in a dying Stewart Haas racing car, the fact that he's 25 points out of the playoffs, ahead of Kyle Busch, a 2-time champion, behind a 23-11 car, near Joey Logano, a 2-time champion, he's putting himself around the cars that car has no business being next to. So, and I think that's what Joe Gibbs saw.
Yeah. I think exactly what you said. Briscoe's done a good job of setting himself up to where he's in these striking positions. I don't know if the strikes will land exactly how he wants them to. He's got to, as you say, just be consistent. I think that's what a lot of people were wanting from him just at the start of the season. Show that you can lead some laps. Show that you can. You pull up these. I'm gonna pull up these standings again real fast. You see Chase Briscoe. He only has 12 laps left.
Yeah,
this entire season. So, but you show that you can be consistent. You show that you can grab some of these wins, or maybe not wins, but stage points.
But see, that's what I would point out is, if you look at it, he has more top 10s than Bubba Wallace and Joey Logano. And the problem with Chase Briscoe in the points is, if you look in the parentheses, those are the stage points.
Mm-hmm.
He's 50 points behind all these other drivers in the stage points. He has 31 stage points this entire season.
Yeah, and that's nearly 30 behind Kyle Busch, nearly 40 behind Bubba Wallace, the guys surrounding him.
And that's the that's the problem that I worry about Chase Briscoe is too often that he gets he finds himself in the positions he needs to be at the end of the race, but it takes him the whole race to be able to put the car in the position.
Yes.
And so he's not getting as much stage points, but
and that's not necessarily a bad thing if you can get yourself in these positions. And I think that's entirely what he's been able to do so far. And I feel like, you give him some time at Indianapolis, you give him some time at maybe Chicago, and he keeps that consistency up. I think exactly like you said, Nashville might not be his cup of tea. But if he's able to get a top 20, I think he's putting himself. I feel more confident today about Chase, especially after what I saw about Chase Briscoe, than I do a guy like Kyle Busch, than I do a guy like Bubba Wallace. Even though Bubba might be ahead of him, even though Kyle Busch might be just right there with him, I do feel confident that Briscoe, because Briscoe has put himself in these situations. Sure, maybe he's not the guy in these races that we're necessarily talking about. I know you're talking about him all the time because you are a Briscoe fan, but he might not be the headlines coming out of New Hampshire today, but and he might not be the headlines coming out of these other races where he's finished top 5, top 10, but he has been there.
Yeah.
And I feel like if he's there still, I feel like he can creep in at a 16 and a 15. I feel more confident with him doing that than a guy like Joey Logano, who loves watching, loves wrecking his car. A guy like Kyle Busch, whose temper and pushing himself too much definitely gets ahead of him. Yeah, Gabe, you missed a very fun race today, Gabe. A whole bunch of rain delays. My favorite, Chase Elliott, crashed out with Joey Logano. JC, Chase Briscoe had himself a top 5, a top 2. Ooh. Hot take, RCR shuts down their cup team and becomes a full-time Xfinity team. JC, take that away.
It's definitely a hot take. It's definitely I can't say that I necessarily agree with it just because it's something that I think if they didn't have Kyle Busch, it's something to consider. The thing I disagree with about that is, first of all, RCR has been around for decades, and I don't think they'll just go away out of nowhere. But I think they committed to finishing it out with Kyle Busch and building around him, and I think they're committed to. I'm interested to see how the rest of the silly season goes with RCR. There's the rumors, like I talked about, Austin Dillon may retire and go up to management position. They could buy another charter. I'm interested to see. Austin Hill obviously is doing better in points and has wins and stuff. I think the better prospect is still Jesse Love. I think Jesse Love is the fact that they pried him over from Toyota was a good move for RCR. He's a future Cup driver, probably a future Cup winner. But so RCR has a decent future. But yeah, I do agree with the sentiment behind why you're saying they should shut their team. RCR's Xfinity team is a championship winning team, and I hope they don't just. Austin Hill is a good driver. Jesse Love, I think he's a future star. Noah Gragson has been linked to Richard Childress Racing for a while. I think I get why you say they might shut down, but I just don't think Richard Childress would do that just because the Cup team and those charters are so valuable. I mean, you shut the team down. I mean, let's say 5 years later, you have that itch to go back Cup racing. It's going to cost you $150 million probably with that time with inflation. I mean, Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that's more of a realistic. I mean, like you said, possibility because um, I think the vet is Kyle Busch. He's playing the Jimmy Johnson role with him, and in more ways than just one. I mean, but I do think the young guns. If RCR has 3 cars next year and Austin Dillon becomes the team owner, the successor, like he's destined to be in your scenario, I think it's going to be Noah Gragson in the 29. I think they renumber the 3. And then Austin Hill probably goes to the 33 car. And numbers can be it can be different, but I think those are the 3 drivers, and that would be the young gun. Noah Gragson's one of those drivers that people like to forget. People like to look at his Legacy Motor Club rookie season and completely trumps the 7 wins he had in 2022 that made him a really good Cup prospect to be. So that he had in Xfinity. I think Noah Gragson's a young gun, definitely, and he can win in the Cup Series given the right situation. And we'll see what Austin Hill is. I think Austin Hill definitely needs to. I don't want to say tone. I don't want a driver to tone down their aggressiveness. I think Austin Hill needs to realize that he's not going. That sometimes that bringing vinegar instead of sugar, if that analogy works, is like, yeah, he can be aggressive all he wants to. I don't have a problem with him being aggressive on the racetrack, but then the antics that he has off the track, that's not going to make friends with drivers. And if all these drivers you've seen with in Xfinity this year, I mean, Cup drivers are twice as or 3 times as bad about it. They're going to race Austin Hill twice as hard. If he acts the way he does in Cup. So I think Austin Hill can be a winner. I think Austin Hill can be a really good Cup driver, but I think Austin Hill is his own worst enemy sometimes.
So the one vet, are we assuming that vet's going to just stay with Kyle Busch since he's already there at RCR? Or
well, so Kyle Busch has he's a deal through the end of this year and then a 2025 team option. And I would be shocked if, especially now with Chase Briscoe going to the Joe Gibbs Racing, Kyle Busch may whine all he wants about I want to go to Hendrick, but Hendrick's probably not going to get rid
You're
of
not going to Hendrick, bud.
I mean,
he ain't going to Hendrick.
I would say Kyle Busch is probably a better driver than Alex Bowman, but I mean,
well, I would too, but
I just don't think it's a realistic situation. Kyle Busch is probably. I would say Kyle Busch will be at RCR through at least 2025, and that's a year and a half away. We'll see what happens then, but he's going to fulfill the rest of his contract definitely. That's the vet. And Hendrick Motorsports, we see the fruits of their success. I mean, 2017 was Casey Kane in the 5, Chase Elliott in the 24, Jimmy Johnson the 48 in his last probably really good season, and then Alex Bowman in the 88. And they did a soft rebuild too. I mean, Casey Kane was let go for William Byron, who went to the 24. And then eventually Jimmy Johnson was, when he retired, replaced with Kyle Larson, Kyle Larson went out there and won the championship that year. So I think RCR needs to do the soft rebuild. Gibbs is kind of doing that with Chase Briscoe. I'm a big fan of Chase Briscoe. When I say this, I in no mean he is the same as Kyle Larson. I think Kyle Larson and Chase Briscoe are like this, but I think that when the principle of what is going on is similar to what Hendrick did in 2021.
You can draw comparisons.
They Hendrick had Noah Gragson was in the Junior Motorsports pipeline. Noah Gragson is probably what Chandler Smith is to Joe Gibbs Racing today, but they don't want it. They didn't want a guy to wait. That they wanted to wait a couple years for him to win. They wanted a veteran who has won in the Cup Series, they got Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson went out and won 11 races, and I don't think Chase Briscoe goes out and wins 11 races. I think realistic Chase Briscoe probably wins 2 to 3 races. I think that's fair given the equipment. But I think for the purpose of the scenario, aging veteran, replacing them with a guy who's still relatively young but has experience over one of their Xfinity drivers. So I agree with the soft rebuild. I don't like Stewart Haas Racing did this year. I mean, it has somewhat worked. They've been looked better. They overhauled the entire team. I mean, outside of Chase Briscoe, they've overhauled 3 drivers in 2 years. So did I say three drivers in 2 years? I don't know if I said that the first time. Then I mean that's they need to do. I like what Hendrick did in 2018 is what a lot of teams ought. That's the blueprint for success. And I mean OCR has the power to do that. They have Austin Hill and Jesse Love in the Xfinity Series, who are both probably eventual Cup winners. I think I would put more trust eventually in Jesse Love winning in Cup, but if you give Jesse Love the 21 team next year, when it's if Austin Hill goes to Cup and it's just Jesse Love, Jesse Love's going to win multiple races too, especially if Custer goes back up to Cup. And so I think Jesse Love's due for a breakout next year too.
We got another question for you, JC. If Dale Earnhardt Jr. go Cup racing one day, what numbers would he roll with? I could see the 88 or the 81 at first.
I think it depends. I don't think we'll ever see Junior Motorsports just completely come into Cup Series by themselves. I think they'll buy into a team. Dale Jr. and Kelly Earnhardt will buy into a team. Could that be JTD? That could be Doherty, Brad Doherty Racing. I'm calling it that because I think JTG is gone. So they're probably looking for another partner. So I don't know if I think Dale Jr. will eventually come to Cup. I don't think it's anytime soon, but I think he'll partner with the team. Maybe he partners with Haas. I mean, Haas brings the money. I mean, maybe Dale Jr. just replaces the Tony Stewart role and being the veteran driver that knows the right people to put in the car. And I agree. I think 88 is probably the car. Maybe he buy it. I mean, eventually, if Kyle Busch moves on, maybe they can work out a deal with RCR to buy the 8 car. I think that's probably what the number would he would prefer, especially getting the lawsuit from the rights to the number 8 core font from Teresa Earnhardt. I think 8 is probably the most likely number because I think the timelines would fit into 2025. Maybe when the first time we could see Dale Jr. in the Cup Series, his team. I would say 88. I would think 83 maybe. 83 is a number that he ran when he first started Chance 2 Motorsports, and then which eventually became Junior Motorsports. But I think 81 is also a possibility. But I think, and yeah, maybe 7 if they ever get it from Spire. If Dale Jr. is going to Cup, it's going to be the 8 or the 88.
He's got to rock the 8.
Well, he wouldn't go to Cup. It would be somebody driving for his team.
Well, so, I'm not saying Dale Jr. needs to be racing again. I mean, he's definitely up there.
But I think.
But I feel like it'd be weird not having Dale Earnhardt. Hey, babe. It'd be weird not having Dale Earnhardt around the number 8.
You know, Richard Childress Racing pulls out of the sport. Austin Dillon becomes the owner. I saw this on Twitter the other day. I do not think it's likely. I think the odds are less than 5%. Dillon Earnhardt Incorporated. Bring back DEI for the acronym. Dillon Earnhardt Incorporated and run the 3 and the 8 car and whatever other number if they still have it. I mean,
well, that's the dream, to put senior to have senior and junior's number. on the same team.
Well,
That's
and that could be a possibility of a team junior partners with. I don't think it's likely. I think a team like Haas, a team like Brad Doherty's 47 group, something like that is much more likely. But I mean, it's interesting. I think Dale Jr. has the itch to go to Cup, but I think he's cheap and he realizes that he doesn't want to pay all that money to buy charters, to buy the new race cars, to get new, because he could. I mean, I think a lot of people forget about it too. Is he's got Junior Motorsports, but a lot of the employees he has are also Hendrick employees, so that he'd have to get new employees too. He couldn't just bring some of those guys. Maybe he could, but pit crews and stuff like that. But I think Dale Jr. has the itch to come come up with his team Junior Motorsports 2 Cup. Um, I think he has the itch to run the next gym car, but I think the time for Dale Jr. coming in and racing himself has kind of passed. Maybe he wants to
retired
do
like 7 years ago. He's kind of. I don't even know if he wasn't around for this current generation of cars, right? No.
no, and that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. He might have the itch to run the next gen car, but it's also Dale Jr. retired not because he wanted to necessarily, it's because he had a good amount, he had concussions, and that kind of prematurely ended his career. But I could see he still does the Xfinity race, and then maybe does a 1, 2 Cup races. Like he's not going to do Daytona Talladega ever again, just because of the danger that could possess, especially with no next gen. Yeah, I agree though. I think Martinsville, Bristol, Dale Jr. loves Bristol. I could see him just. I mean, if he ever comes into the Cup Series with his team, just running one race at Bristol just to get the itch of driving the next gen car. But I think outside of that, he won't race, and I don't think he'll race Xfinity for two. I think maybe 1 or 2 more years, 2 or 3 more years. But I think Dale Jr. Going back to what we were talking about earlier with the popularity of the sport, if Dale Jr. coming back to Cup would help with that too.
Well, obviously, anytime the name Earnhardt is
So
mentioned,
and him not being Sunday, especially with not being an NBC this year, we saw that hurt too. So I think it'll be interesting next year because they got Fox, but Dale Jr.'s going over to Amazon. I'm interested to see the viewership of that because Amazon is not. You can't just go over to your TV. I mean, people have to. I mean, pay extra for.
but the NFL seemed to adapt just fine to
Yeah,
Thursday night footballs, and trust me, the NFL gave Amazon some of the worst games
but but
of the
but even
weeks.
then, viewership just naturally goes down because it's not cable, which is what 95% of people have. So I think I'm interested to see the dynamic of it's going to be naturally Amazon should have less viewers than NBC or
There's
Fox.
another Earnhardt. Wait a
But I
minute.
think I think Dale Jr. himself is he's going to bring a lot of interest back to the sport, and I think a lot of people like yourself realize you just come to the sport once, you're going to be hooked.
Yeah, because it's one of those
It's just the narrative.
it's one of those like you just turn it on. It's there. It's you don't have to worry about unless you really get into it with like your teams and whatnot, and you really like hook that extra level like JC has already. But it's there. You watch it. It's entertaining. It's exciting. There's fights afterwards. Oh, I love those. I love the post game press. Earlier today, Denny Hamlin, he got wrecked earlier today at New Hampshire, and his response was just to park right in front of. I forget who wrecked him, but
And that was Bubba Wallace and Noah Gragson.
oh, okay. Sorry, wrong Toyota guy that pisses me off.
Yeah.
Bubba Wallace's response was to just park right in front of Noah Gragson and make
Yeah.
it so he couldn't leave pit road. Like that's the pettiness and it is very enjoyable. Just those small like Chris Buescher and Tyler Reddick's
I need
altercation.
I need to get you to watch one of these YouTube videos, Tony Stewart's, like fights, arguments, and tempers. Like they have something like that on YouTube. That's like 40. It's like it's an hour long because yeah, Tony Stewart.
I could watch those for hours.
Yeah,
That's
no.
pure entertainment.
I remember there's obviously the most known one. It's with Joey Logano with he and Steve Burns, may rest in peace, um, asked him after the race. Um, he's like, "What angered you?" And Tony Stewart said, "What do you think I was mad about? Dumb little son of a bitch drives me clear down the infield. He wants to. He's the one that bitches about everybody else, but he's the one that drives like a little prick. I'm gonna bust his ass." And then
I've,
he goes
I've
and
heard
busts his
that.
ass.
I've
And then
heard.
he
I've
goes
heard that before.
and then
That
he goes and fights him.
I
And
mean,
it
yeah,
was
that's just pure. What happened with Bush and Stenhouse at the All Star race?
uh-huh.
Um, Stenhouse Senior and Stenhouse Junior. Senior fighting all the races for Ricky. Um,
Yeah.
I absolutely love and appreciate the fights. The wrecks. It's entertainment. I did not enjoy the wrecks today because my glorious king Chase Elliott was a victim in all of these. As my grandfather would say, if they just stopped hitting Chase Elliott, he'd win every single race.
Or if they just moved him, or if they just let NASCAR call the races when the moment he takes the lead.
That works for me too, honestly. Just
I mean,
you know,
I mean, he just
we don't have to
Wyatt Miller, the races. He's the one that races the sprint cars, right? The he's 73, I believe. I did see that the other day. They were talking about there was rumors that were with Carson Quaffle, who is another one of Dale Jr. He's not related to Dale Jr., but he has a lot of talent and potential. He runs in the course tours right now, but has started to run some of the Xfinity course. And there's talks that Dale Jr. may put Wyatt Miller, his nephew, in the '88 car in the course tours and natural stepping stone and eventually into NASCAR. But I think he's won some races I saw in I don't pretend to know exactly what type of dirt open wheel cars they specifically is, but I did see that the other day. He does seem he has the potential. I'm interested to see. He's a lot of these drivers just give him a chance, just run one race, and I mean he seems like a driver that could probably we've seen with Carson Crawford. I mean, yeah, I've harped on this for the last couple of years. I mean, dirt drivers translate to this new NASCAR, and we and I mean, and he could be the next one of that long line of. I think dirt drivers are statistically better than these guys that come up racing on asphalt, and because they can handle the car better, and they have better racing etiquette, and it's and so yeah, I think obviously but I don't want to say obviously because I was going to say obviously he's going to get a shot, but we saw with Jeffrey Earnhardt. Jeffrey Earnhardt paved his way in his career without wanting help from Dale Earnhardt Jr. So maybe he's somebody like that, which I have a lot of respect for. Jeffrey Earnhardt right now could probably he would have an open ride at Junior Motorsports right now if he just said the word. But he's trying to make it on his own in his career, and but I think Wyatt Miller's he's an interesting story. Um, yeah, I think he's going to be a name we're going to hear. I think
Wyatt
five. It's
Wyatt
five.
Miller was also a offensive tackle who is currently a free agent. but formerly
No,
played
no,
for
not the same.
Carolina.
So Wyatt Miller would be related then to, he would be related to Dale Jr. through Kelly Earnhardt Miller, his sister.
Oh, he's 11 or 12.
Yes, something like that. That's what I'm saying. So like,
That's a
it, it,
long. That's a long time to wait.
it's going to be 6 or 7 years before he's. But
Yeah.
you, I mean, you have to be. I think you have to be 16 to race ARCA and Cars Tour,
Hmm.
18 to race truck now. So I think I think we're going to hear that name. That's going to be the name when you see in 2030 when you see Wyatt Miller is going to run as wins at Kansas. I'm like, and you think about it, and it's like, and he's like, oh, he's related to Dale Jr. I was like, I remember, you're gonna remember this in 5, 6 or 7 years from now.
Yeah, the guy that wins like a race. Oh, that's Dale's kin.
Yeah, maybe he's the future driver for Junior Motorsports and Cup.
Raise
Maybe.
hail, praise Dale. It's just a moment where we can all sit back and cry for the glories of the Earnhardt family.
Yeah.
Uh, I didn't get to witness junior or senior, unfortunately, but
So
back,
I never witnessed Dale Senior race. Dale
no,
Senior died before I was born.
yeah, I was born, so
Um, I remember a lot of Dale Jr. But I have to say Dale Jr. was probably past his prime when I remember racing. I mean, I have very few memories of Dale Jr. in the DEI Budweiser car. I do have memories.
my the only rare memories I have of NASCAR as a kid is him in the Budweiser. My grandfather had a
Yeah.
little model of
But
the
I
Budweiser
I
8.
remember him more from the '88, and I think Dale Jr. had a really good 2014. 2014 was probably the best season I remember from Dale Jr. Um, but I remember 2008 was really he was really consistent for the regular season. It was him and Kyle Busch in the regular season. 2008, I do remember that's when 2008 is when Kyle Busch became the most hated person in
Mhm.
NASCAR because he spun Dale Jr. at Richmond, and
Don't hurt Dale.
yeah,
Can't hurt Dale.
well Dale Jr. could stood up for himself then, and then he wrecked him at Richmond the night when they went there in the fall. That was funny. And I remember when that happened. It was like they were like, oh, and Dale Jr. said, hold my Budweiser, woman, and we went up and met Kyle Busch later that year, and yeah, and I hate that Dale Jr. did not get to finish the career seemingly on his own terms. Um, he didn't have a great 2017, but I do think he said this. I can't remember when he said this. It might have been a little while, but on one of his Dale Jr. downloads that he had planned on racing a couple more years, but he did have more concussions and whatnot. But I remember um, the few races I've been to have had the weirdest winners. So it's like you'd think. I mean, I went to the 2010 was 2009 Coke 600. And you're thinking, oh, Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, somebody won that race, right? Somebody like that won the race. No, you know who won the race? David Ruderman. I bet you've never heard of David Ruderman in your life.
Nope.
Drove the double zero for Michael Waltrip. I mean, a bunch of those races. I was at the All Star race in '11 when Carl Edwards tore off the front bumper of his car doing burnouts when he hit a ironically, and I don't know if it was the same one, but so he hit a sprinkler in the grass in the front of Charlotte, and I don't know if it was the same sprinkler, but it was the same racetrack at Charlotte when Chris Buescher hit the sprinkler and flipped his car at in 2022. And I just put that together right about now. So 11 years later, I mean, obviously, but it was funny. They both spun. I mean, Carl Edwards was doing his burnout. Buescher spun because of Suarez, but Um, yeah, they both hit the sprinkler and both damaged the heck out of their car, and they were both Roush cars. I mean, that was funny, but yeah. Talladega in 2015 did. Dale Jr. had the highest of highs and the lowest of lows that year. 2015 spring, he won the race. I think Jimmy Johnson finished second. He was pushing him. Ryan Blaney finished third, I remember, in the Wood Brothers car. And then 2015 fall, Dale Jr. was that close to winning the race and making it to the round of 8, which he won the 2015 Phoenix race. And so we were a Kevin Harvick oopsie-daisy away from Dale Jr. making the Final Four in 2015. And who knows, maybe Dale Jr. wins the championship. So, yeah, 2015 Talladega. Dale Jr. probably has some really happy and really sad memories about that year.
Why do you think Austin Dillon gets all the hate? The short answer, he's driving Dale's car.
I think, yeah, because I think I would agree. I think I don't think Austin Dillon is spoiled. I've never understood. I never agree with the silver spoon mentality that a lot of people had. Because Austin Dillon won the truck championship and an Xfinity championship, or nationwide, I think at the time. Austin Dillon deserves to be in the Cup Series and deserved to get into the Cup Series. But I think it's the 3 car. I think it's just the fact that had he come up to the Cup Series in the 29 or the 33 car.
It's like if the Lakers decided that whoever they draft this year, if they draft a guy like Zach Edey, who they're mocked to, they give Zach Edey the number 24. Like that ain't gonna fly with any Lakers.
Zach Edey could have a All-Star Hall of Fame career, but they would still piss.
Doesn't matter because you're not replacing Kobe. And just like Austin Dillon, he's definitely deserves it. I'm not saying he's undeserving and spoiled. I think it's just the fact that he's driving the black number 3.
And I think a lot of the stuff is a deflection off of that. People call him Silver Spoon and the nepotism because he races for his grandfather, because they don't like that he drives the 3 car. I think, so I think had he had the exact same career just running in the 29 of it, which running the 3 car, I had mixed feelings at the time about it, but it's Richard Childress' prerogative to let him do that, and if he wants to, then so what? But I think I do agree that if he ran the 29 of the 33 car when he replaced Harvick, then he would not have gotten the backlash. Because I think a lot of people forget about it too. Is not only was he replacing the 3 car, he replacing Earnhardt in the 3 car, replacing in quotes. It's also that he replaced Harvick. Mm-hmm. He was running Harvick's team,
and that's 2 of the best racers.
Harvick had his fan base, and I think and then so I think even though Harvick has 65 wins in his career, the 2014 championship, all that stuff, had Harvick gotten in the car in 2001, even winning, he won the second race of his career in 2001 at Atlanta, beating Jeff Gordon, and it was a fan favorite moment. Had that car been the 3 car instead of the 29, had they not renumbered it at that moment, I think Harvick would have gotten much of the same hate that Austin Dillon does now. I think it's a lot of misplaced anger.
It's tough because whenever you're driving a car that people have written country songs about a different driver for, it's going to be hard to live up to that legacy, especially someone who's as loved and cherished in the NASCAR community as Dale Earnhardt. You couldn't have picked a word. It'd be like to make it even to add even more. It's like, imagine if the Lakers let LeBron James walk, and then they let Zach Edey wear the number 24. So they replaced LeBron, who's arguably the greatest player of all time, they replace Kobe's number with who's arguably the greatest Laker of all time. And they give it to Zach Edey, even if Zach Edey wins 4 championships for the Lakers and has a very successful career. He's still going to be.
Well, Kobe got a lot of the hate coming out of even when he won 2009 and 2010 with Pau Gasol. A lot of people did not like Kobe because he drove Shaq out of LA.
Shaq drove himself out, so I don't care. Kobe's my GOAT. No one can.
I think the most accurate way to say it is that people just have their anger and they don't like him.
Scapegoat.
And it would not have mattered what Austin Dillon did, anything that he did.
Austin Dillon could wake up tomorrow and find a cure for cancer, and then win every single race for the rest of his career, and people would still be like, "Yeah, no."
No, he should have done it in the 29 core, not the 3.
Yeah. Like, nah, you can't do it. No, not Dales.
Yeah.
All right. Well, my computer is about to die. I think that's all the talking points we've hit. JC, how do you feel? This is your first podcast. What are your thoughts? Let the audience know.
I think it went rather smooth. I think a lot of silly season in general will be finalized within the next couple weeks. Obviously, I think we're going to find out officially that Chase Briscoe is going to Joe Gibbs Racing on Tuesday. I think the Haas stuff seems like whether we want to announce it's a done deal. Cole Custer's going to the Haas factory team. I think a lot of the stuff is about to be finalized. It's just, I think Chase Briscoe's deal has been done for 2 weeks. It's just about announcing it.
This is the dumbest thing I've heard all day. I'm not gonna lie to you. You had some great takes, and I appreciate your activity in the stream. But no, the Golden State Warriors will never trade Stephen Curry. That is quite possibly it does not matter. The Warriors, no, because the Lakers never traded Kobe. The Lakers never traded Kobe. The Heat never traded Wade, although he signed in free agency. The Heat actually traded back for Dwayne Wade.
Yeah.
Dallas never traded Dirk.
They will never trade Steph Curry.
They will never trade Stephen Curry is the greatest player in their franchise. They would, if they did that, then everyone in that front office would be hated for the rest of their jobs.
But they should.
Doesn't matter if they should or not.
No, but I think it's an interesting scenario. It's a scenario that
the only way
they will never trade Steph Curry no matter what.
The only way that happens is Draymond and Clay somehow end up off of Golden State, and then Steph is like, I want to go play with Clay, or I want to go play with Draymond, and Clay could very well walk in a couple weeks. We could see Clay head to Orlando.
I would be shocked. I would be surprised if Klay Thompson's back in Golden State. I just think guys, Joe Lacob, I think those guys won't. I think they just won't trade Steph Curry for the symbolism that Kobe and Dirk and those guys similarly had. But if they are 11th or 12th in the standings, similarly to where they were this year, Steph Curry is putting the team on his back. I think
it'd make more sense to just go get a piece of. I'd rather trade if.
But you're mortgaging your future for maybe getting up to the 7th seed and making it to the 2nd or 3rd round. I don't think they'll.
As a Laker fan, that's what I've been dealing with for 5 years. So that's
I fully 100% believe that the Lakers should move on from LeBron James. They should do a sign and trade, maybe get some picks. But I think
by Anthony Davis, by LeBron James, by Rudy, by D'Lo. Get JJ Redick out the building. He just got here. Get JJ Redick out the building.
I disagree with you on that. I think it's time to build around Anthony Davis. I think Anthony Davis has been the best player on the Lakers for the last couple seasons. People don't like to admit that or not.
I agree with you.
Anthony Davis was the best player in 2020 when the Lakers won the championship. Should have won Finals MVP, but they're never going to do that. But I do think I do think that the Lakers should move on from LeBron because they've reached their ceiling. And I understand where he's coming from with the Steph Curry scenario. I don't think they will, but I would.
If Mike Dunleavy Jr. wants to go back to Duke, I will gladly have him back at Duke. I will listen.
I would trade Steph.
As a Carolina fan, as a diehard Tar Heel, I don't know if you can see it back there. That's Dean and Roy. That's Dean and Roy hugging. It's Legends Believe in Blue. Love my Heels. If Mike Dunleavy Jr. Wait, exactly. See, you're messing in the wrong house talking about Duke. I'll gladly.
Well, I don't think he likes Dunleavy either. I mean,
listen. Mike Dunleavy, you could. Mike Dunleavy and John Shire, sure, they're Dookies, but I don't really have many problems. John Shire was my good friend last year. Remember, Mike? So who cares, man? You got to add the rivalry at some point, you know? Sure, he won an.
What was his record against Tyler Hansborough?
Exactly.
No, Dunleavy wasn't. Dunleavy was the 2000s championship, I believe, when they beat Arkansas then. No, I was thinking he was 2010.
Dunleavy wasn't on that because that was John Shire was a 20.
Yeah, no, that's what I was saying. Dunleavy, I believe was Dunleavy the 2000 champion with like Elton Brand and.
Elton Brand won with them? I thought Elton Brand was in the pros by then.
I wasn't alive then, but I do remember. Yeah, I know they won the championship against Arkansas, I believe, or Maryland.
They beat Arkansas. I can tell you that much.
It was either Arkansas or Maryland one of those years, but yeah.
But they never played because Maryland was. No, they've never played Maryland in the Mike.
It was something like that. Yeah, Clint Dix got the job at Alabama. So did Vinny Sincerely. So yeah, I think they could. I'm not disagreeing with you. John Parker Wilson has the broadcasting job with them. Well, not Eli Gold anymore. Eli Gold is. I think he's retiring. I think John Parker Wilson's actually replacing Eli Goldbrock doing the radio stuff. But yeah, no, I don't disagree. If Mike Dunleavy wanted to, he could go find something at Duke. Duke is, as much as it irks the hell out of me, Duke is the brotherhood, and it does seem like they do. Yeah, it's the brotherhood at Duke University, whatever the hell Zion said.
Semesterhood. What do you mean brotherhood? Ain't no brotherhood.
But Duke seems to take care of their own, and so yeah, I agree. If Dunleavy wanted to leave the Warriors, he could go find something to do at Duke, easily, and yeah. So
I mean, there's a lot you could say. I mean, there's a lot of people like that in the NBA where they could just go back to their college and be just fine as well. You open the door when you mention college basketball. Me and JC, we have a lot we could talk about there.
Did you see the blue and white scrimmage the other day?
Ian Jackson had like 19.
Yeah, he had a good game.
Drake Powell had like 10 or 12. I was impressed. Elliot Cadeau looked like he hit some jumpers. That made me happy.
Let me tell you, referring to your last comment, I would, if I am any school, I would, even in the NBA, I would give Nate Oates a blank check. And I would do this at any college in the country. Even arguably, I like it. I wasn't for him at the beginning, but he has grown on me, especially especially with last season. I would offer a blank check to Nate Oates to come to coach Carolina. Nate Oates is quickly becoming that guy. And Alabama is a basketball school. I wouldn't say basketball school now because I think Kalen DeBoer is going to do a really good job at Alabama. And I think I have my opinions about Alabama football. I'm of the opinion, from an outside perspective, that I think Alabama started the wrong quarterback last season. I think Ty Simpson gives Alabama their best chance to win, but I'm interested to see how Kalen DeBoer brings. He's seems to be recruiting well, so he's adapting to the South, this recruiting in the South, building off the brand of Alabama. But I'm interested to see how he does coaching the first year, and I think Alabama's going to compete for a championship. Just like I think it's going to be business as usual for Alabama. So I don't like
Yeah.
it necessarily being considered a basketball school because I still think football will be king. But I think Nate Oates is doing a fantastic job, and he stole a couple guys that I wanted to carry in Chapel Hill. So he's
Here's
really
the
doing a really
here's
good
the thing about that. I like you mentioned that at Chapel Hill. My dad had a really good point about this too. Diehard Carolina fan. There was a quote by Dean Smith that said, if you come to North Carolina, we'll compete for a national championship. If you don't come to North Carolina, we're still going to compete for a national championship. I believe that Hubert Davis knows something that Nate Oates and we don't. I'm not saying that we weren't trying to go after Cliff, but I think Jalen Washington might be better than what Cliff could give us.
I still think, regardless, Cliff is going to be a fantastic player, and I think he's
Well,
going to.
yeah, yeah, and
Well,
and obviously it'd be nice to have him in Carolina blue, but
yeah.
uh, no,
Um, I don't think that takes away from Jalen Washington, but I am. But I think I'm. I don't. I'm not. I haven't finalized them yet, but I've started working on my preseason top 25 of college basketball, and I'll breaking news right now. Put it on the bottom of the screen. Alabama's going to be my number one team in the country for preseason number one. So I think Alabama has the best team in the country right now on paper. Now he brought in a lot of players and a lot of really good and talented players. Maybe they don't all mesh together. Maybe Cliff does not mesh well with Grant Nelson. Neither one of them seem to be the best of shooters. I mean, they can shoot, but not the most consistent. But I'm interested to see. I think on paper Alabama has the best team, and I'm interested to see them on the court. And I'm interested for Alabama coming to Chapel Hill for the
they'll
SEC.
be Chapel Hill December 4th, and
Yeah,
I will be there.
ACC SEC Challenge.
And I will be there. Glad I'm debating on either wearing my Carolina jersey or buying a I'm blanking on his name. Why am I blanking on his name?
Elliot Cadeau.
No.
Cormac Ryan.
Quarterback at Georgia. Now he's at the Rams.
Stafford?
No. National champion, undefeated,
Oh, Stetson Bennett.
buying a Stetson Bennett jersey just to piss off
Quinn.
Bama fans.
Why?
Just to piss off Bama fans.
Alabama went like 4-1 against Stetson Bennett.
Well, all right. That's.
I mean, yeah, no, Stetson did beat him in the national championship, but I'm going to go to bat for Alabama on this one. I firmly believe. I mean, we saw what happened when Bryce Young. You see, I think I'm knocking out two birds with one stones in this comment right here. First, I think Bryce Young is still going to be a really good quarterback in the NFL. I think give him time in Carolina, give him a non-JV high school JV team around him. He can be a good quarterback because you saw that Georgia team in 2021. I believe 15 players on that Georgia defense alone start in the NFL this season. Bryce Young torched them for 500 yards and 5 touchdowns and blew out that Georgia team. And I'm going to go back and say that Alabama did lose to Georgia in the national championship 33-18, but that was without John Mechie and without Jamison Williams. And I think those are two. I think those are two playmakers, and I think Georgia did not have a stop for Jamison Williams in the SEC championship game, nor the first half of the national championship game when Alabama was still winning against Georgia at that point. I think Alabama wins Saban. Bryce Young and crew wins Saban the 8th championship. Had the wide receivers been healthy in that game. And the narrative around Bryce Young is different.
I don't think Bryce Young's the guy. I don't. I think everything was a disaster this season in Carolina, and part of that is the fact that Bryce Young is not the guy.
I think there's a comparison to be made with Bryce Young and some of the drivers we were talking about earlier. With Bryce Young looked worse than he truly, than even his lower than his floor really is, because he was trying to do too much with something he did not have around him. I think that's the biggest thing about Bryce Young, especially with his turnovers. And so I'm going into, I'm not saying I'm saying he's going to be a really good quarterback, but I also encourage people to go in this season, treat this season like a rookie season too, to some extent.
Yes.
And give him and go in with an open mind, go in with the clean slate. And if he sucks again this year, then that we can start having the talks about, was he a bust. But I think we should go in with a clean slate with Bryce Young.
I'm willing to give him one more year. I feel like the time is there, but at the same time, I,
Well,
I'm just waiting to sit back and sit on Sports Sync and just go, I told you so.
what the problem is, and we've seen it with a lot of these quarterbacks now, and I don't, and as a Green Bay Packer fan, I do not understand why people don't do this more, because it's successful. I mean, it took Jordan Love was a backup quarterback and sat and watched behind. Now, not everybody has the luxury of watching him and being around Aaron Rodgers that long.
Yeah, but
And learning from him.
Zach Wilson's going to win MVP this year. Calling it. Book
But,
it. That's
but
my
that,
hot take. The Broncos make the playoffs. Zach Wilson wins MVP.
but see but that's my point though. So in the 3 years that Jordan Love got to sit and wait behind Aaron Rodgers and develop into a starting MVP level quarterback, how many first round quarterbacks have you seen been labeled as busts and released off the team already? Okay, you want to go into the 2021 draft the year after. Mac Jones, who led the Patriots to the playoffs, and I believe firmly has been used as the scapegoat in New England because they put him with a defensive coordinator, is now a backup quarterback in Jacksonville. Zach Wilson's doing God knows what in Denver. I mean, Trey Lance is in Dallas, is the backup quarterback in Dallas. So those are three quarterbacks. Justin Fields, I still think is a
Is the
decent,
kick returner in Pittsburgh.
but I still think he's in a decent situation. But he's been shipped off. That's four quarterbacks in 2021. 2022, you saw one quarterback in the first round, but Kenny Pickett has been shipped off to Philadelphia.
There's
I
only
have my problems with Kenny Pickett. I thought Kenny Pickett should not have been in the first round to begin with, but still.
As a Cleveland Brown fan, I didn't have any problems with Kenny Pickett either.
But see, that's what I'm saying. So five first round quarterbacks alone in the two drafts after Jordan Love, the two drafts waiting in between Jordan Love from being drafted to when Jordan Love started were all traded or released from their team in that time frame. So I think that's the problem with it, is like they don't give these quarterbacks their fair shot. But I think it's because Roger Goodell hate more. I think it's because there are too many people that think, oh well, if he's a mobile quarterback, why doesn't he go play running back or wide receiver? Like, Mel Kiper Jr. famously in 2017 said, oh well, you know what? I think Lamar Jackson should go switch to wide receiver. So I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of this is media driven stuff, but alrighty. And I thank everybody coming. If you have any comments throughout the rest of throughout the stream or something, just drop them down below. I'll watch some of the comments if anybody makes any for the next couple days. So make any comments and I'll be sure to respond to them. So Nick died, unfortunately. So I'll see you guys later. with me leaving and you not being there that it would end.
Apparently it didn't. I'll shut it off.